Welcome back to Weightlifting as a Lens for Learning Higher Principles. Today we're going to talk about setting a baseline for improvement. So setting a baseline, any good program that you start in weightlifting will have you start by baselining your current ability. So that could be in terms of just your overall strength, or that could be in your knowledge base, in your technique. Really, it should be in all of those things. And why do we do it like that? Well, especially for beginners, there are a lot of hidden constraints that will stop you from getting the most out of a program and from hitting the goals that you have if you're not aware of them up front. And so, what do I mean by constraint? I mean something that you're not aware of that is going to stop your ability. So, for example, mobility issues, strength imbalances, technique problems, or even the ability to feel your muscles activate. Like, this is actually something I think a lot of people don't know. But if your muscles or a muscle in your body is sufficiently strong, you should be able to feel it and or flex it. And if you can see a muscle on your body that you can't figure out how to make fire, that indicates that something's not right there and that there's a weakness that you weren't aware of. Now, mobility issues are a huge thing. So I have here an example of teaching someone how to do a squat. You can see over here, you've got, in this meme, you've got Ronnie Coleman, who's a multiple Mr. Olympia super heavyweight challenge champion, known for bodybuilding with extremely heavy weight and yelling all the time, lightweight, while he does just absurdly heavy things. And he's kind of an inspiration because his quote is something like, "If I can pick it up, it's lightweight." So, consider that. But anyway, not to get too far off track. If I was going to take, for example, how to teach someone how to squat, you shouldn't assume as the person learning how to do that anything about what you know, right? Because the first thing that I would do to teach someone how to squat is not to put them under a bar. I would not take them over to the rack. I would tell them to take off their shoes. And I would look at how their feet are touching the floor. And then I would ask them just fully unweighted to get into a squat position. And I would watch what happens to their feet and their knees as they squat and how far down can they go. And you'd be extremely surprised to see what happens. A lot of times, the farther down somebody goes because they have a lack of ankle mobility or too much calf tightness or something, their heels will pop right off the floor. And this isn't good because you need to maintain a solid foundation of 3 points of contact on your foot. You want the outside and inside of your foot to touch the floor as well as your heel at all times. And you'll also see some problems with hip mobility, for example. If someone's hips can't internally rotate, then as they go down, one side of their body is going to go forward and one side's going to go backwards, or you're going to have somebody's knees flare out really, really far, or their feet are going to rotate. And it's not that it's necessarily bad that they get into these positions, but you have to know those things. And you would never assume them from just going about not weightlifting, for example, just in your daily life. Doing your normal job or whatever. Like, these things are only uncovered as you start to baseline. And so once we got through the base mechanics of exactly how things are supposed to move, and maybe we decide that there needs to be a specific type of warm-up that addresses some of these imbalances, and we address them over time. Then once that technique and those issues are actually known, do we actually baseline in terms of strength? So that means we obtain or we figure out what somebody's 1 rep max is, or their 5 rep max, for example. A 1 rep max means what is the absolute highest amount of weight somebody can lift in a given exercise one time. And that information is important because that tells you how much weight that you should be lifting as part of your program. Now, you don't want to be doing full 1 rep maxes every time that you're in the gym. This is a huge fatigue issue and would not get you where you need to go, but it'll be some percentage of your 1 rep max for a given exercise in your program will tell you that. Now, that's the weightlifting part, right? And it's important to know that you can only fully plan how to progress in your program if you have an actual real baseline. Because if you just assumed that your 1 rep max was 100 pounds for a given lift, and so then your program's going to tell you, okay, you're going to do 5 reps and 5 sets at 60 pounds for 3 weeks or whatever, 3 times a week for 3 weeks. And it turns out that your 1 rep max was 150 pounds. Well, you're not going to get any stronger lifting that 60 pounds a bunch of times. You're just going to waste your time. So it's really, really important to be brutally honest and also try your absolute best in order to get where you want to go. One other thing I wanted to note is that not only will you have hidden constraints, but you'll also have the upper limit of your potential hidden from you. You have no idea how strong you could get. Usually we can only see just a little bit beyond where we are right now, and we can understand the path to get there, but we can't see the upper limit of what something looks like. And baselining is the first step in uncovering some of that hidden potential. And often that potential is realized by removing the hidden constraints because the path becomes more clear. Let's talk about the general principle now. Anytime that you want to improve something, you need to baseline where you are currently. That baseline is what will provide you the firmest ground to move on towards your improvement. And the way that you prepare that ground and set that baseline, no matter what your improvement is or how you need to change, is by being brutally honest with yourself. I've been really thinking about the term of being ruthlessly honest because it sounds like there's not a single part of your character that you're not willing to give it an intense amount of scrutiny to. And by doing that, you start to uncover the hidden constraints that you weren't aware of. You know, it's funny to ask yourself, what are the underlying mobility issues in your spirit? How flexible are you in the way that you think spiritually? What things aren't you willing to think about? What methods of receiving a message from the Lord on how to improve are you able or willing to receive, and what aren't you? Anytime we put constraints like that, or we have constraints like that in place, we limit how much we can receive from the Lord. And so if you're going to take just a general spiritual principle and you're going to look at your life, you're going to look at your spiritual life, what's your spiritual baseline? One way that you could ask yourself what that is how well do I live up to my understanding of what I should be doing? You know, how close is how I live, how God would live if he was in my place? And such a seemingly simple question really gets to the heart of everything that it means in the gospel to change. The whole process is to become like him. And you have to start where you are with what you think he's like. And then how you figure out exactly where your baseline is and where it should be is it is revealed to you. And he reveals it through a number of means. But one of the easiest means, and honestly, I mean this, if you are one of those people who says, God never answers my prayers, or I don't hear answers to my prayers, it's because you're not asking the right questions. And the question that you should be asking, if you want to have the fastest bout of revelation you've ever found in your life, is to go kneel before him in all honesty and humility and say, what is it that I'm doing wrong? And you won't be able to finish your prayer before you have 6 ideas of what those things are. Just don't be timid in your approach to accepting that. because that is what he reveals. He reveals what you could be, what you should be, and where you currently are in relationship to what you should be. And that's what the extent of your weakness is. He gives you a glimpse. He says, this is how good I am. This is how good you could be. And this is what you're doing right now. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about weightlifting or parenting or name a thing. Name something spiritual that somebody struggles with. Name something emotional. Name something technical. All of these things can be approached in the same way. He can reveal what you lack in small increments, and you can work towards it. Let's look at the scriptural basis for this process. So I have here Ether 12:27. And if men come unto me, I will show unto them their weakness. And I give unto men weakness that they may be humble. And my grace is sufficient for all men that humble themselves before me. For if they humble themselves before me and have faith in me, then will I make weak things become strong unto them. So let's break this down a little bit. I want to first point out that step number one to baselining your spiritual weakness is if men come. And that if is a really big if. It's an important if because it shows that you don't have to come at all. But if you come, because you chose to come, then the very first thing that happens when you come to the Lord is that he'll show you your weakness. And that is a very different picture than most people paint of what it feels like to come to Jesus. We have a lot of happy feelings and good emotions and warm and fuzzy things. But when you really seriously come to him, what actually happens is he shows you your weakness. And then why does he do that? Because it's so that you may be humble. Because his grace is sufficient for everybody that humbles themselves before him. And how does he do this? What is the process by which he shows you his weakness? The way that he does it is that he gives you a glimpse of just how good he is. And he peels back the layer that's blocking you from realizing how unlike him you are. And that realization between what you should be and could be and what you are is that weakness that you have. And that can be extremely painful. And in the scriptures, this is what the phrase, the fear of the Lord means. If you would go to study that, you'd find lots of references to the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, or the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, or just the fear of the Lord coming upon people. It's a very fruitful study. But that feeling of comparing yourself to the goodness that he's shown you and to what you actually are is the start of where you can find humility, where you can find growth. And if you take that feeling and don't turn away from it, but turn into it, don't hide from the light that shows you the darkness in you, but turn into it. Then you go through the process by which you start to reconcile to those things that he showed you. And when it says that you can humble yourself before him, what does it really mean to be humble? This word has been maligned and misunderstood through many, many, many talks and many, many thoughts. But if you ask yourself, like if you go read in the Book of Mormon and you read in Helaman 3, where it talks about waxing stronger and stronger in the humility and firmer in their faith in Christ, what does that mean? To be humble is how much you're willing to submit yourself to that fear of the Lord. It's how much correction can you take? How much honest feedback can you bear? And once he gives you something like that, are you willing to come back for some more? And if you truly are, he'll take you through a process where he points out all your weaknesses and what things could be stronger and what things could be better. And if you never turn away, but thank him honestly for it and incorporate it, and that's what it means to have faith in him. You know, you make him your desire, his example. You want to become like him. Then he makes those things that you're weak in to become strong. And to be strong means to be like him. So, how do you set your spiritual baseline? Come unto him, have him show you your weakness, have him show you what to do to improve, wrestle with how it makes you feel, and despite all that, turn towards it and come unto him. And that's the start of a new life. And it doesn't matter where you're starting. But if you do that in all things, that's what it means to really go through the gate and to repent.